So I had a Brew Earl Grey this time around because, well, it's a bit late at night. It's like 8 o'clock. I've still not sorted out the microphone situation, so I'm still using my Tascam DR40, and there's some crazy bitches outside making too much noise, so it'll pick up all that kind of shit as well, unless I combine maybe the shotgun mic. But the shotgun mic is attached to the top of the camera, and the top of the camera is the shotgun mic is actually angled across my head, not actually directly out my body. So I desperately need to, next payday, I'm going to get it sorted, and I might just have to blow a load and just get all the stuff I need, because Australia is insanely expensive for equipment. So I have to buy a mic stand, a condenser mic. Whether or not I go down the USB route or I get an external recorder, I don't know. That adds more costs. I'm looking for about $500 for the whole lot. So yeah, so you'll have to wait for a minute unless I use the lapel mic, but the lapel mic sounds really shit as well. So you'll have to put up with it for a minute, but I'm sure you won't care too much about that. So I'm hoping this goes up actually on the Tuesday evening UK time, but I cannot guarantee it because I'm filming this on the Monday as opposed to the Sunday like an idiot. But we've got a nice long weekend next weekend, so I might try and do a load of them, like 3 in one go, so that it's easier for me to keep up. But yeah, let's rattle through some bits that I've kind of missed. So last week I was ill because I had some gastro thing. I don't know if I was had food poisoning. Or what the hell, but yeah, it wiped me out for like 2 days. So things we missed last week were Dell updating the XPS 13, and the XPS 13 is a laptop that I've got. It's really, really good. They've included a rose gold version now. It's going to introduce the 7th generation Kaby Lake processor, an increased battery life, so it's going to have a 60 watt hour battery compared to the 56 watt hour battery that my current XPS 13's got, which supposedly gives up to 22 hours of battery life on full HD screens and 13 hours on a quad HD screen. I'm very skeptical about that because I can't get the maximum I've managed to get out of my notebook and my XPS 13 is 7 hours, and that's if I put it on proper energy saving and I kill loads of programs, and that's still pretty terrible, I think. I mean, it's still pretty damn good. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's pretty damn good, but that's basically half of what you're proposing it can possibly do. So, I mean, I know Windows is inefficient at battery management, but still, come on, you can't go claiming that it's up to 13 hours when it doesn't even come close to that. And I've seen some test content that says it lasts for maybe 10 hours if you're lucky. So I'm not buying that. But yes, increased battery life. They're also providing AC wireless as well because, you know, AC wireless is the thing. I'm still toying with the idea of upgrading my current editing rig, my Gigabyte laptop, to an XPS 15 and getting dedicated graphics because it's cheaper than a MacBook and it's on Windows. But I'm in two minds. I might wait for the Kaby Lake stuff to come out on the XPS 15, or I might just, and then maybe pair it up with something like a Razer Core, so I can edit and render stationary and like here, and then if I want to edit on the go, I can still do that. But I don't know. I might hang fire. It will depend. Well, I need to make a decision before I go back to London for Christmas, and I'll figure it out then. Logitech also acquires Saitek. Now this is kind of quite exciting, I think. So Logitech's been doing a lot in terms of steering wheels and game controllers and lots of things in terms of gaming in a more realistic way, I guess. They do a lot of game peripherals, and it's great for the enthusiast gamers, of which now there are fucking loads. If you look at the numbers, I need to actually, I'll dig out the numbers officially, and I'll try and link something down below on the official numbers for this. But PC gaming is fucking skyrocketing at the moment. It has been for the past year and a half. I think it's because people are underwhelmed by the next gen consoles, and because PCs now are pretty damn fucking cheap. You can get a PC for $500 for the same price as an Xbox One S even, 1C. You can get a really kick-ass rig with like an i5 processor and some really good graphics, and you can actually drop that down if you include like a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse for $500. So say like you pay $400 to maybe $350 for like a just standard rig. That's not bad, and you can get like decent gaming out of that. You can do at least 30 frames a second, 1080p, if not more, and you get better general, well, in my opinion, better games and better experiences. The fact that Logitech's bought Saitek is quite cool, I think. Logitech have obviously made some really, I mean, the steering wheel I had before, I can't remember what it was called now, the GT something, well, the Logitech GT was a fucking good steering wheel anyway, but they make some really cool stuff. Saitek have made cockpit accessories for years, make some really, really good yokes, they make some really good joysticks and loads of really cool stuff. And Logitech also make their own joysticks, and I think it will be a really good way for Logitech, with their big business buying power, to get some of the engineers at Saitek and combine this brand into a really good thing. And I think actually this is a good thing, because at the moment there isn't really there's nobody really making specifically flying simulator kind of stuff. There's certainly a big call for it. If you look at like the YouTube following in the last couple of years in terms of simulators, it's jumped massively. You look at the Squirrel Nuts, and I'm just trying to think. There's a few other big YouTubers that I've kind of completely blanked on, but they've created some really, really good content around that whole simulator kind of subgenre, and it's really interesting. And it's also not frowned upon. It's not uncool to be playing Euro Truck Simulator, and it's not uncool to be playing, well, maybe 5 Minute Simulator, but it's not uncool to be playing a flight sim, because it's enthusiast driven and it's kind of quite cool. There was a time maybe 5 years ago when that was really frowned upon, but at the end of the day, I still wouldn't even give a shit anyway. I would still play those games even if they were frowned upon, because I enjoy that shit, so fuck you all. Uber self-driving cars. This was a last week's story. So Uber, for quite a while now, have been testing self-driving cars. They've pretty much, the entire point of Uber really is to have an automated anti-taxi kind of system, whereby you don't have a driver, you have an app, you press the app, you have a car, rocks up, it takes you to your destination, it's all safe, it's secure, whatever. And really, drivers are inconvenient for Uber. They don't want to have to pay drivers because it's expensive. And you'd much rather not have to pay drivers, you just have some cars. Now, I love Uber. I'm a real big proponent of Uber. I don't particularly agree on the paying of the drivers. The way that works is kind of a bit shit. But Uber as an idea is fantastic. And somewhere like Sydney is great. Local taxis in this city are fucking terrible. Every time I take a local taxi, they don't know where the fuck they're going. They always ask you where the fuck to go. I'm like, you're the taxi driver. You've been driving around the city for 5 years. Why the hell should I know? I've been here for 2 months and I know more than you. What the fuck is this? Or they'll answer the phone while they're driving, or they'll make dangerous maneuvers, And so I hate taxi drivers in this city, which is why I use Uber, because number one, it's cheaper. Number two, they know where they're going because they've got an app that's going to tell them where to go. And number three, I'm safer generally. Not only are they driving better because it's their own fucking car, but also Uber is tracking that shit to where it is. I know what the driver's name is. I know his picture. I've got his license plate number. So if anything was to go wrong, I've got all that information there. I can report that to the police, and I can send my location to a friend or whatever. Whereas a normal taxi, you don't have that ability. And somewhere like Sydney, it's fantastic. And I do use it in London, maybe less so because I usually walk everywhere in London. I do walk everywhere in Sydney, but if I'm going somewhere a little bit further out, especially if it's for work, I'll use Uber all the time. But Uber self-driving cars, they were in Pittsburgh, they were trying this thing, and it's really quite cool. I think what's actually going to drive this is not Apple and not Google. I think what's going to drive self-driving cars to be mass-produced and be done well is going to be the likes of Uber and the likes of Lyft, and maybe some car manufacturers together doing it, not Google. The only reason Google will do this is for data. So Google is not in the business of consumer experiences or any of that kind of bullshit. Google is in the business of data. They want to sell you data, as however they can get data from you to sell ads is what they're going to do. So because of that, Google are probably not the best place to be innovating in terms of the self-driving car space, because they've not got enough of a vested interest in it to drive it forwards. Now, admittedly, Google does some really cool things, and I think Google is a really good company. But at the same time, Google is only in it for the ads. That's basically what Google's advertising or operating model is to make money off of ads, which is by selling user data to advertisers. That's basically what it does. And so whatever's going to sell ads for Google is what they're going to do. Now, you could, I have a sneaking suspicion the reason Google are going to do this is because if you're sat down in a car and the car is driving itself, you've got more time to watch YouTube and browse the internet and do other things. So because of that, you're going to be having more exposure to adverts, and so therefore Google's going to be like, oh, that's really cool. And also, because it's a car, it will tell Google things that will be really cool, like what kind of times you drive, what kind of destinations you go to, how much fuel you use, I don't know, what kind of shops you go to, that kind of stuff, which you can sort of measure through a phone, but maybe not as accurately. And there might be another money-making scheme on the back of that, whereby Google do like a hire kind of thing, where you hire a car, you don't actually physically own it, you hire it for the period you need it, almost like a taxi, you pay the rate, and then it drives off somewhere else and goes and picks someone else up. But Uber and Lyft, I think, are the two that are actually going to drive this forward, because I think they have a vested interest in getting this shit right. Because at the end of the day, they want to save money on drivers. You're still going to have drivers, because still people are going to want to have that level of personalised care. And certainly we're not going to ever live in I don't think we'll ever live in a world where we'll have complete 100% self-driving cars, because there'll be times when that's not appropriate, like when you're farming or when you're in the middle of buttfuck nowhere, and then you're going to have to go into the city or, whatever. And there'll be some people that actually want to drive cars, which is a bit of a mistake, because most people are fucking idiots and crash. Well, not most people, but there's a high percentage of, high percentage of deaths are caused by traffic accidents. So yeah, I think they're going to drive that kind of stuff forward, and I think it'll be really, really good for the likes of you and me, because it means that it's going to drive down the cost of things as well, because the car's going to drive more efficiently. There's not going to be a driver you have to pay, and also you're going to have, everyone's going to save money because they don't have to buy cars, and we're going to be living in a world where we can have maybe a car for an hour, and it's going to cost us less, and we won't have to then have a car for the entire year, whatever, and spend Christ so many thousands of dollars maintaining that car. We just pay for it when we need it, and that's it, and we don't have to drive it anywhere. We can browse YouTube or Twitter or whatever the fuck we want to do whilst we go into IKEA to pick up our shit. Or better yet, we get someone to load the car up with stuff. So you go to, the car drives to Coles, and Coles loads your shopping up, and it drives on and drops your shit off within like a certain time frame. How fucking cool would that be? So I'm a great proponent of self-driving cars, and I think it's actually going to be a really good thing. The other bit of news that came up this week, it might have even been today, was that a Google self-driving car was involved in one of the biggest collisions it's ever been involved in, mostly because a van driver completely blew a red light. Google are reporting that basically the self-driving car sat at a green light for 6 seconds, then pulled out, and a van just completely blitzed through a red light and completely T-boned this car. Both the driver that was in the car, in the self-driving car, because they have to by law have a driver in the car just in case to take over, and the van were pretty much uninjured, so they're all fine. But basically, I think both are pretty much a write-off. It does pose quite an interesting kind of question in terms of how we manage self-driving cars in an environment where we've got self-driving cars and non-self-driving cars, and we'll have to worry about that for quite a while to come. And pretty much every single time there's been a collision, it's been the fault of other people. It's always been because some idiot behind hasn't been paying attention and has crashed into the back of somebody, or someone just T-boned it, or whatever. It's never been the fault of the actual car itself. It's not just gone on to a wild rampage. There's been some reports, obviously, of things like Tesla doing some odd things, but Tesla is interesting. Tesla's autopilot is like a funky version of cruise control. It's not self-driving. Because it doesn't have radar detection. It doesn't have... You look at the Google cars, they've got a big box on the roof that does loads of fucking telemetry shit, and it's got a really powerful PC in it. A Tesla is just basically a normal car with some sensors around it, and that's it. And cameras, and it can't quite pick up things like lines, and it can't quite pick up that there's a corner, and it can't quite pick up some other stuff. Whereas a Google car can, because it's not looking through camera technology, it's using telemetry and radar and loads of stuff in a big huge box on the roof. And a lot of the times, and as Tesla has always said, if you're using autopilot, you still need to be in control. And it will wake you up for that kind of stuff. It does seem almost a bit pointless, though, to have that feature in a Tesla, because by the nature of having something like that, you're going to be less switched off, because you're not physically driving. You're not going to be as switched on to hazards around you. So you're going to just let the car take over and fold your arms, and then your mind's going to wander off and do something else. And so I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing. If you're going to do self-driving, do it properly. Do self-driving properly, don't use autopilot. I think it's really cool that it can park itself and all this other kind of stuff is really good, but I don't know, it seems to be a bit of a gimmicky thing, and I don't, because it makes people complacent, I don't think it's very safe. So Google are having an event on October 4th. I'll be trying to cover this, so that means that Brew Time will actually probably air or come out on the Wednesday, because it'll probably be, because it'll be on US time. I'll have to probably do it Wednesday evening Sydney time, and then try and get it up for Wednesday evening London time, but we'll see. It depends on what the actual time scale is for it. I need to find out what the time is. I've got no time off work either, which is annoying. But basically, it's looking likely that Google are going to announce going to release the Google Home thing a bit more, which I'm actually a bit disappointed about Google Home, because basically it's just a Google Chromecast with a shell. It's not even... Amazon Alexa and things like that and Amazon Echo are really quite cool, because they're actually pretty powerful bits of kit. But the Google Home is not that powerful. Not that it necessarily needs to for things like voice recognition and stuff like that, but in the future it means you're going to have to replace it with something else. And it's actually, it's cheap. It's like $150. So it'll be cool to see that. There is talk about Chrome and Android merging in the next in this release as well. There's been some teasers from Google for the past 2 years. The New York Times did an interesting article about them doing this a while back. And 9 to 5 Google have been talking about this kind of shit for ages. I think it would be good for Chrome and Android to actually merge, because it makes the experience seamless across the board. I don't know how well it's going to work, but we'll see. Pixel C phone's coming out, so that'll be really interesting. So I've got a Pixel C here, which I use for, well, all sorts of stuff really, for my notes, for this, for work, all sorts of stuff, and it's really cool. So having Pixel C phones would be really, really nice, especially if Google are actually making them themselves, because I really am impressed with the Pixel C. I prefer something with a thinner bezel, because the bezel is a little bit big, but it's pretty impressive. There is also talk that there might be a Google On Hub update, and they're going to name it Google Wi-Fi. I don't know if this is necessarily needed. I mean, I think the Google On Hub at the moment is pretty damn good. I am tempted to actually get one shipped from America, but when I was looking at getting it done, it was going to be stupidly expensive. And I also need to sort out my internet generally anyway, because the internet here is fucking shit. It's like it's now jumped to 9 megabits down since I got the telephone replaced, the telephone socket replaced, but it should be about 17 meg down, and I get 500 KB up. So I'm in the middle of the city, basically. I'm like, I don't know, maybe 500 meters away from the exchange, if that. And I get fucking abysmal speeds. So I probably need to sort out that first before I start upgrading my Wi-Fi, because I don't actually, there's no point having fast Wi-Fi if I haven't got actually a fast internet connection to serve that Wi-Fi. But it'd be interesting to see what Google announced for that, and then maybe I might go and get the new Google Wi-Fi and get it shipped from America and do that. Some bits to kind of end on, really. So an NSA operative leaked some hacking tools about 3 years ago by remoting into a PC, and there was some stuff left over, and it looks like some Russians have got hold of those hacking tools. I say hacking loosely, it's hacking, quote unquote. Basically making use of vulnerabilities in things like Cisco firewalls and switches and other appliances, as well as other manufactured devices. And the most scary thing, though, is that the NSA didn't actually tell manufacturers that this had happened. They just did a threat report and said it's not a threat, and that's it. So this is a bit worrying. So this is where things like universal backdoor keys are a really fucking bad idea. Because what happens is, okay, so the NSA can get into stuff, great. Right, okay, so they can get into things like iPhones, they can get into things like Android phones, Windows, Cisco appliances, firewall appliances, whatever the fuck it is. That's assuming that you keep your shit tight. So if the NSA has a universal backdoor and it doesn't share that with the world and doesn't get leaked, then that's fine. But if it does, that's fucking shit. And also there's the ability for people to find out what that backdoor is, and if they can use that universal key themselves. So this is why getting rid of encryption and having backdoors to things is a really fucking bad idea. And this is why when anybody suggests it at government, I'm just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? So that was quite an interesting story. It was reported in Reuters. I'll put a link in the description below, as along with everything else. Now, there was a really interesting article in the Register. Now, I thought this was really cool, and actually is very, very true. So the title of the article is "Sad Reality, It's Cheaper to Get Hacked Than Build Strong IT Defenses." Now, in the article, it reported about $200,000 US is about how much an attack, the average attack, costs a company. And I think it equates to, on average, about 0.4% of their income, or something like that. So, which isn't very much when you compare that to 1.4% of internal theft and everything else, and then there's like 2% on false reporting, and there's loads of other stuff. So it's like really small. The one thing they couldn't report on is obviously the PR fallout after the fact, and in terms of the reputation you have as a company, does that impact on your potential profits for the year? That's one thing that's very anecdotal, and you can't really report on it and figure that shit out. So, but it is true. There's no point spending, I don't know, let's say $1 million on mitigating someone hacking into customer databases if it's only going to cost you maybe half of that to fix the problem when it happens, or to refund the money for things like banks. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Obviously, me as a customer, I fucking hate that shit because I don't want my shit hacked. But at the same time, at the end of the day, the whole idea of a company is to make money. That's the bottom line is the most important thing, and by law, that is what's required in the US. So there would be no point in you investing loads of money if you don't get a return on investment on that money, unless your return on investment is arguably the PR fallout if you don't secure customer data. But it's a really interesting article. I encourage you to watch it because it's really, really good. The last thing I wanted to touch on, because there was also an interesting article by TechCrunch, and I I say interesting and TechCrunch in the same sentence, and I understand that sounds very wrong, but it was actually a really good article about, we're looking at cyberbullying the wrong way. Now, the actual title of the article is very clickbaity, but it does raise some interesting points about policing of the internet and things like that. Now, recently, when I say recently, the past month or so, YouTube drama has just blown out of proportion. Well, actually, just the internet has blown out of proportion in terms of thought policing and real tinfoil hat stuff, real conspiracy theory kind of shit, really. About Twitter censoring stuff. I know YouTube bringing out this bullshit Heroes program, which no one fucking likes. And the social justice warrior kind of thing that's come about. Now, I don't usually talk about that kind of shit because I am primarily a tech channel, and this isn't stuff I generally talk about because it gets me enraged and I get annoyed about it and this kind of stuff. But it did raise some really interesting questions about, number one, cyberbullying as a thing and trolling, and what it means for different people. Now, I'm always the believer that if you're an adult, if you're like 21 at the very least, if not a little bit younger, and someone says some mean shit to you, then you just ignore it like a sensible human being. You move on with your life and go and do something else, because that's the whole point of being an adult. People are dicks, you deal with it, you move on, because if you don't, you cannot deal with life. If you have some cunt asshole that's going to tell you some bullshit, then and you make a big thing of it and you victimize yourself by saying, oh, that's not fair, because it's like, well, yeah, but that's the whole point. They've won. That's the whole point. They're trying to get a reaction and try and get under your skin, and you're giving them some ammo. So don't fucking do it. Now, it's a little bit different if someone gives you rape threats and death threats. That is a little bit different. I will admit that if you're going to threaten to rape somebody or threaten to kill somebody, that is definitely against the law, and actually that is really serious. Although most of the time it's probably bullshit, but at the same time it still should be treated with reasonable seriousness. But things like, oh, someone's going to call someone a bitch. Grow up, deal with it. Someone calls someone else a faggot. Grow up and deal with it. The problem is when kids are involved. I think, not that I want to say protect the children, because I think children actually, in terms of bullying, I think children, young people should be exposed to bullying. I'm a great believer of that. I was bullied at school, and I think actually if I wasn't bullied at school, I wouldn't be the kind of person, the strong, confident kind of person I am today. Although I'm still quite introverted as a person, and I will probably talk about that in my Ask Azzy segment, which I'll go into in a minute. In terms of my work life, I'm confident. What I do for a living is fucking up here. I don't want to boast too much, but I think a certain part of that, of my arrogance and my self-importance, is based on the fact that I was bullied. Because of that, I became very, very thick-skinned, I became very arrogant, and I look at the world in a really cynical way. And so that is how come I've got to kind of where I've got. And so I don't think shielding children from bullying is necessarily good. At the same time, I think there should be limits to the actual bullying that goes on. Certainly if it gets physical, it starts to get to the stage of, well, okay, maybe not. And if it gets to the point where it's constant and it's every single day and you're beating people down and they end up being suicidal, then yes, that's very, very wrong. Especially in terms of the male generation, and certainly with the LGBT plus kind of entity as well. It is quite concerning. But, I still think it's good. I think it's a part of growing up, and I think it's really, really helpful. Online is a little bit different, because as children, young people don't understand that you can turn the internet off and you can block people and you can do that kind of shit. And the same time, those people aren't anonymous people. They're real people that they go to school with. Whereas if some fucking idiot on Twitter was going to call me a faggot, number one, I don't care, because faggot to me, I don't care about the word faggot. I use faggot quite liberally, because for me, if I use it in a joking way, it completely takes away the meaning of faggot for the person that's trying to use it in a disgusting way. This is it's the same with all that kind of stuff when people try and just spout hatred and just vitriol and disgusting. There's two ways I usually deal with it. Either I just block the cunt, or I make a joke about it, because usually they can't spell, they're usually illiterate, and they're usually uneducated. So I usually make because they're like, oh, you're a faggot, and it's like Y-O-U-R as opposed to Y-O-U apostrophe R-E, and I usually make a joke out of that because it's quite funny, because they don't actually fucking know how to grammar. But I think the way that we mitigate cyberbullying is through self-regulation. You cannot expect a company like Twitter, or even the government, to try and regulate speech. I'm a great advocate of say whatever the fuck you want, pretty much say whatever the fuck you want, because it gives me a right to ridicule whatever the fuck you've just said. So if you're going to spout hatred about marriage equality, I'm going to spout hatred about how much of a bigot you are, and how much of an arsehole you are, and how much of a self-centered, egotistical, lunatic you actually are and how stupid and idiotic your beliefs are. I think that is a great part of what being in a democratic, open and free democratic society is all about. You have people that lean on the right and you have people that lean on the left. And as part of, as part of a civilized society, that's a really, really good thing to be having. And so I'm a great believer in that. So I don't think it's right for Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or whoever the hell it is to monitor and regulate that shit. I think there should be steps whereby if you report somebody, there's a physical person that goes through and makes sure that's, it's actually a legitimate thing. Like if someone's harassing someone, and that's different. But, just block people. Just block people. And I say it is different from young people. It's so different for young people because they're not at that stage where they can move on from that kind of shit. But yeah, it was a really interesting article, and I kind of wanted to do a bit of a rant on it afterwards. It's not very succinct. I did want to try and do like a dedicated video just to that, but I understand that it's going to get people mad and people get... I try not to get politicised within videos like this, although it's something I'm really passionate about. I don't like doing it because people disagree, and and everyone's entitled to their opinion, and people will disagree with me, and I don't mind that particularly. But it sort of it doesn't make for good content. It doesn't actually really add much to the conversation either, I don't think. It's just basically saying the same old shit that everyone else says, which is why I don't usually talk about it. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. The only thing to end on is my Ask Azzy segment is still going because no one's fucking asked me any fucking questions. So if you want to ask me any questions, hashtag AzzyAMA on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram if you really want to. You can send me an email, aaron@azzychill.com. With a question, you can send video responses, you can send whatever the fuck you want, pretty much. I'm AzzyChill everywhere, so send your shit to me and I will try and answer it. Literally ask me anything you want. I may or may not answer those questions based on how inappropriate they are, but this isn't the BBC and we don't have the watershed, so I can pretty much say whatever the hell I want, as long as it's not something ridiculous like I'm not even gonna give you any suggestions. Yes, I think that is pretty much it. So apart from that, I shall catch you in a later video. I wanted to be you. I wanted to be you. I wanted to be you. Who's that sexy thing I see over there? That's me, standing in the mirror. Do, 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 do. That's me, standing in the mirror.